You know that feeling when you look at the modern world and something just feels off, like we've lost our way? You're not alone in that. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because they give us a sense of security, even when deep down we suspect things might be more complicated. This is exactly the kind of tension the Italian thinker Julius Evola explored his entire life. He wasn't interested in politics in the everyday sense. His real focus was on something much deeper, the spiritual decay he saw eating away at the modern world. For Evola, the noise and chaos of today, the constant chase for material success and shallow pleasures, are all symptoms of a much bigger problem. A profound disconnect from what he called the traditional world, a time when society was oriented toward higher spiritual truths. Evola believed that in ancient times, people understood that life had a sacred purpose. It wasn't about your job, your bank account, or your social media following. It was about connecting with a higher reality and realizing your true potential. He saw the modern age as a kind of rebellion against this sacred order, a long slide into confusion where we've traded meaning for convenience and depth for distraction. He put it bluntly when he wrote, "The modern world represents the exact opposite of any traditional civilization." In other words, we're living inside the problem. We're so surrounded by it that it becomes hard to even see it clearly. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right, of holding on to views that make you comfortable. Evola would say that's part of the trap. Our own minds, conditioned by this modern environment, often work against our ability to see anything beyond it. This gets to a really interesting point about how we think. There's a natural tension inside all of us between our instinctive, automatic thinking and a deeper, more aware state. Our instinctive mind is like a quick, efficient assistant. It wants to categorize things, make snap judgments, and defend what it already believes. It's the part of you that gets defensive in an argument or feels a jolt of irritation when someone challenges a cherished opinion. It's not necessarily bad. It helps us navigate daily life, but it's not equipped for deeper understanding. It prefers the comfort of the familiar, even if the familiar is wrong. Then there's this other capacity we all have, even if we don't use it often, a calmer, more observant awareness. This is the part of you that can step back and watch your own thoughts and reactions without immediately getting swept away by them. It's the part that can question things. Remember when you were a kid and you realized a childhood belief, like about Santa Claus or a monster under the bed, wasn't quite true. That moment of clarity didn't come from your instinctive mind arguing louder. It came from a quieter place of simply seeing reality more clearly. That's the kind of awareness Evola is pointing us toward. He argued that the modern world constantly stimulates and rewards our reactive, instinctive mind through outrage news cycles, social media arguments, and consumer culture, while starving our capacity for calm, detached observation. This is where we all, myself included, sometimes fool ourselves. We think we're being rational and independent-minded, but often we're just reacting, defending our identity that's been shaped by the very modern world Evola criticizes. We adopt views because they feel good, because they make us part of a tribe, or because they confirm what we already suspect. Evola's challenge is to recognize this self-deception. It's not about swapping one set of political opinions for another. It's about the much harder work of changing your level of consciousness itself. It's about trying to see the world and your own reactions from that higher, more objective vantage point, what he termed the absolute individual, someone who is no longer a slave to external conditioning or internal passions. It sounds lofty, but it starts with simple things. It's in those moments when you pause before reacting angrily online. It's when you question why you feel so strongly about a particular idea. Is it because you've truly contemplated it, or because it's what everyone around you believes? This inner work, of distinguishing the reactive self from the observing self is the first step toward what Evola saw as a truly reactionary stand. It's not a stand against progress. It's a stand against inner and outer decay. It's a rebellion against the shallow, fragmented person that modern life encourages us to be, and a movement towards something whole and authentic. This cracks open a deeper understanding of where we began and the journey we are all on. We start by seeing the world in simple terms of right and wrong, good and bad. Things feel clear-cut. We see something that offends our sense of order, and we have a gut reaction, a quick, almost physical response push back against it. This is the initial phase, where our position feels solid and the path seems straightforward. It is the feeling of knowing exactly what you stand against, even if you are not yet entirely sure what you stand for. It is that immediate sense of frustration with the noise and chaos of the modern world, a desire for a quieter, more stable, and more honorable way of living. We look at the constant churn of trends and the erosion of tradition, and our first instinct is often to simply say no. But then we enter the confusing middle, and this is where things get tough. This is the phase Julius Evola would describe as the crucial test, the point where mere reaction is not enough, and where the real spiritual work begins. You might be someone who resists change at first, holding tightly to that initial simple clarity. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions, and this middle phase is the ultimate transition. It is where you start to see the complexities. That thing you reacted against so strongly might have a sliver of a point, or the solution you championed might create new problems you never anticipated. This is the valley of confusion, where the easy answers stop working. Evola saw this not as a failure, but as the necessary dissolution of the lower self, the breaking down of the simplistic ego so that something higher could be built. It is the feeling of being lost in a forest. You know the direction you came from is no longer an option, but the path forward is overgrown and unclear. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately. That moment of hesitation where the knee-jerk response dies in your throat and you are left with a silent question mark. This is the critical divergence Evola highlighted between the knee-jerk reaction and the thoughtful, traditional response. The knee-jerk reaction is just that, a jerk, a spasm. It is emotional, often angry, and ultimately passive, because it is dictated by the very thing it claims to oppose. It is a product of the modern decay, not a solution to it. The thoughtful response, which Evola would align with a true traditional spirit, is active and conscious. It comes from a place of inner principle, not outer provocation. It is the difference between seeing a vulgar advertisement and simply feeling disgust, versus understanding that your disgust stems from a deeper yearning for beauty and meaning, and then consciously choosing to seek out and create that beauty in your own life. The reactionary stand is not about screaming at the world to stop. It is about building an inner citadel that the chaos cannot touch, and from that place of strength, acting with purpose. From that difficult middle, if we persevere, a new clarity begins to emerge. It is not the simple clarity of the beginning, which was brittle and naive. This is a harder, earned understanding. We start noticing that our values are no longer just ideas we parrot, but principles we live by in small, consistent ways. The focus shifts from what is happening out there to who you are becoming in here. It is the realization that resisting modern decadence is less about battling external monsters and more about slaying the internal dragons of sloth, distraction, and fear. This new perspective is grounded and resilient. It understands the chaos, but is not defined by it. We begin to see that the journey was never about going backward in time, but about reaching inward and upward to touch something timeless, something that Evola called the eternal traditional spirit. It is the quiet confidence of knowing your center and acting from it, regardless of the storm swirling around you. The journey cycles through these phases, each time offering a deeper and more integrated understanding, moving from simple rejection to a profound and active affirmation of what truly matters. Through this discomfort, we begin to understand that the tightness in our chest, the restless nights, the feeling of being slightly out of step with our own lives, isn't a sign of failure, but a signal of growth. It's the friction of an old skin that no longer fits, a set of beliefs and habits that were once comfortable but now constrict who we are becoming. This isn't something to be feared or immediately medicated away, but rather sat with, listened to, and understood as the necessary labor pains of a new self waiting to be born. We so often want to sprint through these phases to get to the good part on the other side, but the real work, the real magic, happens right here in the messy middle. This process forces us to question everything we thought we knew about ourselves. The stories we've been telling ourselves for years, perhaps decades, begin to show cracks. We might have built an identity around being the reliable one, the free spirit, the perpetual helper, or the cynic, only to find that role now feels more like a cage than a comfort. Letting go of that story can feel terrifying, like losing a part of ourselves, because in a way, we are. But it's a part that was never truly us to begin with. It was a costume we put on to navigate the world, and now it's grown threadbare and tight. The discomfort is the feeling of that costume finally splitting at the seams. As we sit with this feeling, without rushing to patch the tears with new, equally ill-fitting narratives, something remarkable begins to happen. We start to see the mechanisms behind our own psychology. We notice how we've been performing for an invisible audience, seeking validation for a character we're not even sure we like anymore. This is where the Barnum effect often shows its hand. Those vague, personality-defining horoscopes or online quizzes that we once nodded along to, seeing profound truth in their generalized statements. We realize we were the ones filling in the specifics, grafting their broad descriptions onto our unique experiences, effectively letting them write our scripts for us. Letting that go is the first real step toward authorship of our own lives. And when we take that step, when we consciously decide to stop accepting the generic descriptions and start interrogating our own specific desires and reactions, a new kind of clarity emerges. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier, not because the world has become less complex, but because you're no longer filtering every choice through a fog of outside expectations. That constant, low-grade anxiety about choosing the right thing, the right career move, the right thing to say, the right way to parent, begins to dissipate, because the definition of right shifts from something external to something internal, something that resonates with your core. It's no longer about what the horoscope said you should be, or what your old identity would have done. It's about what feels authentic in this moment. This authenticity isn't about becoming selfish or disregarding others. It's quite the opposite. It's about showing up as a more whole, more present person, which is the greatest gift we can offer to our relationships. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much. The driver who cuts you off, the long line at the grocery store, the negative comment online. These things begin to lose their power to derail your entire afternoon. They stop feeling like personal attacks on your peace and start being seen for what they are, minor events in a vast and complicated world. This happens because your sense of self is no longer so fragile, so dependent on external circumstances aligning perfectly. Your peace becomes an internal condition, not an external demand. This journey inward, through the discomfort and out the other side, is ultimately a reclaiming of sovereignty. It's the process of taking back the narrative of your life from the cultural scripts, the inherited beliefs, and the Barnum effect generalizations that have been directing your play from the wings. It's realizing that you are not a character to be perfected according to a preset mold, but the author who gets to decide what happens next. This authorship is where true freedom is born. It's not a freedom from responsibility, but the freedom to respond to life from a place of genuine alignment rather than conditioned reaction. Together, we discover that this path isn't about finding a fixed, perfect state of being. That would just be another cage, another pair of shoes that might fit today, but pinch tomorrow. The goal is to cultivate a fluidity of self, a compassionate awareness that can hold our contradictions and our complexities without needing to force them into a simple, definable box. It's about becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable truth that we are always in a state of becoming. There is no final destination where we are finally finished, and embracing that is the most liberating part of all. The joy is in the unfolding itself. This ongoing process of shedding and becoming requires a gentle courage. It asks us to look at the parts of ourselves we've hidden away, the vulnerabilities, the passions we deemed impractical, the dreams we thought were too silly or too grand. It asks us to welcome them back into the fold of our identity, not as flaws, but as essential threads in the rich tapestry of who we are. This integration is what makes us feel whole, no longer at war with ourselves, no longer expending immense energy to keep certain parts in the dark. And from this place of wholeness, our engagement with the world transforms. We stop trying to extract from life validation, success, a sense of worth, and start participating in it with a sense of contribution and connection. Our work, our relationships, our creative pursuits become expressions of this inner alignment, rather than attempts to prove our alignment exists. We begin to operate from a deep well of internal resource, rather than constantly searching for external refueling stations. Life begins to feel less like a struggle and more like a dance, with its own rhythms and flows, its moments of quiet and its moments of exuberant movement. This is the profound, hard-won understanding we arrive at after navigating the discomfort, that our greatest journey is the one that leads us back home to ourselves, to a self that is constantly evolving, yet fundamentally at peace. It is the recognition that we were never broken, just unfurnished, and that the work of a lifetime is to lovingly build a home within ourselves that we can truly inhabit. It is from this solid ground that we can finally meet the world, not with fear, but with curiosity and an open heart. The philosopher Julius Evola captured this ultimate realization with a beautifully simple and physical truth, noting that true freedom feels like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit. After miles of walking in them, we had almost forgotten the constant grating pressure, the subtle ache that had become our normal. We didn't realize how much energy we were spending just compensating for the poor fit until the moment we slipped them off and felt the cool, solid ground beneath our bare feet. The relief is not just in the absence of pain, but in the rediscovery of a natural, unencumbered way of being that was ours all along. It's the feeling of coming home to yourself and knowing you never have to leave again.